Okay, so at this point, we pretty much have everything in place and functioning perfectly for our game. We're just missing a few things. We're missing our start screen, where a player can, hit the start button. Right now we hit play and we're playing, period. But when we build our game, they're not going to have the play button that we have right now let me just jump back over here in the Unity editor. So we need to set up a screen, a main menu screen as I'm going to call it, that will give a few instructions, again following along with what Casey did, and allow a player to hit the play button or start or whatever we're going to call it, and then the game begins. And then from there, we can lose by running out of lives, which is good. And we need a screen to go to say we've lost, and then the ability to hit play and start back up again. Right. And we also need a screen where if we win, so we need to come up with some sort of rule for winning. We have an easy one for having lost. And then we need to have a win screen show up, and again, the ability to hit start and start playing again.
Sure.
So then we've kind of packaged everything up, and it's a complete game at that point. So to get this in place, what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of scenes. We are using a scene right now. If everybody recalls, back at the beginning when we kicked the project off, the very first thing we did was we created a scenes folder, and then inside that scenes folder, we saved the scene that was the default scene that started out. We saved it as level 1, which means we could then have a level 2, and we could have 2 guys coming down, or a different background. Right now we don't have much of a background, but you get the idea. You could actually have levels. If you're going to work in a game such as this, where here we've got just one player and there is no real concept of levels, or if the concept with levels was something really simple, meaning, if you get 5 guys in a row, we bump it up to level 2. Now you've got to get 10 guys in a row, and then we bump up to level 3, so on and so forth. You could keep everything confined to a single scene. But if you were to turn around and create a first-person shooter where you have a level that you're running through,
it's like a physical stage.
And use Unity. Unity is a very powerful editor. So you'd have your level that's saved out, giving it whatever name you want to call it, and then come up in here and you start working with all of your geometry. You create your walls and you put all your models in. You light it. You get everything set up the way you want it. And you have where your player is going to spawn in and your enemies, etc. And then, in exiting out of that level and going to another level, then you really would want to make use of scenes.
Right.
Because that allows you to work inside the scene itself or the level as if you were working in any of the other level editors that are available today, like working with good old Quake stuff or Unreal stuff or Half-Life stuff, etc.
Sure.
So while Unity does allow you to come in and quite quickly build fully functional games, don't forget it's a very powerful 3D editor as well. So when we reanalyze this game and we put a different infrastructure in place, the entire thing will take place in a single scene. Okay, I want you to just, in the back of your mind, realize that we do not have to use scenes the way that I'm about to show you. I'm really glad that Casey did in his project just to show people how to jump from scene to scene. But when we redo this, we're just going to have one scene, and that scene, we're going to come up with a class type of screens, and we're going to be able to show screens based off of a given state that we're in. So states will actually have associated screens with them.
Okay.
And then these screens will basically encompass a bunch of controls, and then they're going to have their controls positioned properly, so you can have menu screens and your game screen, etc. But we'll be able to keep everything in a single scene. And the reason I'm saying that now is I just want everybody to keep in mind that we're not limited to just one way of doing something in Unity. We have multiple ways of doing stuff. But this way is going to show us how we can jump from scene to scene. So let's go ahead and come up here, File, Save our scene. Let's save this guy. So our scene, level 1, is currently saved. Now let's do a new scene. So coming up here to File, do a new scene. Here we are with a new scene. Let's go ahead and save this guy. I'm going to do a File, Save Scene, or Save Scene As, doesn't matter. And I'm going to jump into my scenes, and let's call this Main Menu. And we'll hit Save. Okay.
You're not going to put anything else in here right now.
So right now, nothing else is going to be in here. You'll notice over here, up under our scenes folder, as a matter of fact, since we're done with pretty much all of our game stuff, well, we're going to come back to scripts. Let's go ahead and close up sounds. There we go. So nice and neat. I like that over here. It's very important. So scenes, we got level 1. We've got main menu. And let's go ahead, just keep things simple. We'll just work with this camera, and we can come in here, and if we want, we can make it a black background like such. Everything else is irrelevant to me because we're going to use this simply for GUI display. That's all. So now that we have set up our main menu, and I'll just go ahead and hit Control-S to make sure that our scene is saved. Now, let's come in here and do a Save Scene As. So we'll save it with the way it's set up. Back up under Scenes. And let's create a new scene, and we're going to call this scene Win. So this will be the scene displayed to you when you win. And then File, Save Scene As. And let's call this one, again, back up under Scenes, Lose.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've got some scenes in place. So how do these guys all interact with one another? How do you go from one to another? Well, first thing is if we come up here to File and we come down to Build Settings. In the Build Settings, we have to supply the scenes that are going to be built into our game. Okay, so right now we are not specifying any scenes. So when we go to build our game, we don't have anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to start dragging my scenes in. We're going to start out with our main menu scene. And it's not so much the order. We are going to, I'm going to start out with 0. So this will be our first scene that we're going to have. But the number that you see over here on the right-hand side, the index of each of the different scenes, that's the key thing that you'll need to remember. So that when you call upon an application, the application that you're in, and you have it go to another scene or load in another scene, you're going to be providing the index number. Okay. And that's how you'll get to those.
All right.
So we're going to start out with our main menu, and from there we'll be going into level 1, and then you may lose the game or you may win the game. 0, 1, 2, 3. So you can see our number increasing there. So, and you can also see just while we're in here how we can easily change this from a web player to a web player streamed, Windows standalone. I mean, there's all sorts of things in here. So now that we have all of that set up, at the moment we're still inside of our lose scene. And what I'd like to do is start working with our main menu. So this is our very first screen that we want to be presented with when the game launches up. So we need to make sure that that one is opened up. So I'm just going to come over here to Scenes, and with our main menu, double click it so you can see that we are now in our main menu scene. So don't get confused with that. It's very easy to do work in the wrong scene.
Yeah, just keep an eye on the top bar there.
Exactly. So here we are inside of the scene. Now, what is it that we want to do, and how do we actually apply code here if we don't have any game objects? Well, we do have a game object. Our camera is a game object with components attached, so we could simply attach a script object to this guy. So it would be our own custom script component that we've added. And that code will respect the regular start, update, on GUI, etc. So we can take advantage of that. So in this case right here, we need to create a new script. So instead of creating it here, just using templates here, let's jump back over the template that we created earlier. We'll do an add, and we're going to do a new item, and it's going to be a mono behavior. And this is going to be our main menu script. And look at that, how convenient.
Nice.
Okay, so now that we have this, do we have anything that we want in our start? Nope. Do we have anything that we want in our update? No. In this particular case, we're going to be working with on GUI. So I just will change update to on GUI. I'm going to take start out just to keep things, looking simple. There we go. Push this down, just being picky as it gets later and later. There we go, looks nice. So now let's start out by giving some instructions, the same as Casey had done in his example. And then we want to turn around and give a button, present a button that the player can press to begin the game.
Okay.
So first things first, let's go ahead and create a string variable that we can use, and We can do it in OnGUI, or even better, if we were to do it outside of OnGUI, we could just hold a reference to it where it's been created only once as opposed to being created over and over and over and over every time OnGUI's hit. So back here, if I did a private string and we call it instruction text, and we go ahead and initialize this right out the door to instructions, colon, I'm going to do an escape character, so \n, so that's going to be a new line.
New line, yeah.
Okay. And now I'm going to say...
Press left and right arrows to move.
Thank you, sir. Left and right.
Arrows to move. Then you need a new line.
And then a new line.
And then underneath that will be press spacebar to fire, period, close quotes.
Press spacebar to fire, period, close quotes, and terminator. All right. So our string is set up only once, as opposed to putting a local variable inside a GUI and having it set up over and over and over. Very nice. Now down here in the OnGUI, we need to present this label. We're going to put it in the upper left-hand corner, so we're going to do a GUI.label. And we need to provide a new rectangle, or a new rect for this, so new rect. And we need to go ahead and give it a location. So we're going to say, again, 10, 10, not 20, 10, there we go, by 200 wide by 200 tall. Make it nice and big. And now for my GUI content, let's just give it our variable. So instruction text, like such. Okay. Let's go ahead and Control Save.
That should work.
Jump back over. So you're happy with that?
We need some way to bring up that screen. If we hit play in here, we should see it.
So if I hit play right now, we're going to see it, and then
should think so.
I don't think so. But let's try.
So? Okay.
Hit play.
All right.
We're missing it.
What are we missing?
I'll see if you can come up with this one. Excellent question. And ladies and gentlemen that are watching this video, please keep in mind at this point it's now 4:30 in the morning, and as it gets later, our thinking ability diminishes.
Are you not rapping enough?
Well, let's get back to the basics.
Okay.
And so this is actually a very good example for anyone that's following along that's new. What's the basics? A game object. What is a script? It's just a component. So for a script to actually function, it needs to be attached
to some game object.
To a game object.
Okay.
We've created the script.
But we haven't attached it to anything.
You got it. So I can take my main menu right here and just drag and drop it over here on my main camera. That's all I've got to do. Now if we come in and hit play, we have text.
Gotcha.
And it looks like we might want to widen it up just a little bit. But this is great because it does show that it will word wrap like I was talking about earlier. So let's just jump back over here real quick. And we'll take it up to 250, which I know will be plenty. Large enough. Play. And boom. So instructions, press left and right arrows to move, press spacebar to fire. Now we need a button. Something that we can start the game with. So let's jump back over into Visual Studio. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some more variables containing a width and a height. Again, I can do these as fields, or I can do these as local variables. Just value types. I mean, it's going to be cheap to throw them up on the stack over and over and over. But I'm going to set them up as fields. Once again, just so it's done one time in the story. So we're going to do another private. In this case, we're just going to have an integer, and this is going to be my button width. And I'm going to set my button width to 200, a big old wide button. And I'm going to set my button height to a value of 50, like such. Okay, and putting the private in here, I'm just making sure it's very clear to anyone looking at that these are private to this class. So now, why did I do this? Well, up to this point, I've been just wiring in what's generally referred to as magic numbers. Now I'm about to start using words, these variable names, that describe exactly what kind of data they hold. And I'm going to use these in some very simple mathematical expressions to control how the button is positioned on the screen. We mentioned earlier that it'd be kind of cool to show how we could go about like centering something up. So this is an excellent place to do it. So for our button, let's go ahead and create it. GUI, not buoy. GUI dot. We have a button. Fantastic. Now let's go ahead and give the button its new rect. So I'm going to say new rect. Now, Let's have a little bit of fun here. I want to center this guy up horizontally. So I need to know how wide the screen is. Up until this point, we've just gone and measured everything back in the back. But the game's not really been locked down to just a solid resolution or aspect of like 600 by 450 or whatever. And so at this point, as far as coding goes, I don't care what size you end up having the screen at. I just want to make sure that whatever size it's at, I'm centered up. So we can do that by accessing the screen, and then on the screen I can access the width. And if I take the width and divide it by 2, that gives me the center of the screen.
Yeah.
But now I need to center the button. So the center of the button, if I was to just leave this number right here and hit comma and move on to the top location, the left side of my button is going to start at the center of the screen. So I need to shift the button now to the left to center it up. But I only need to shift it by half of the button's width.
Right.
So I'll subtract away so that I am moving it to the left. So let's go ahead and subtract away from this our button width, divide it by 2, because I only want to go half of the width of the button. That will center me up. Now, with that, let's just give 200 down for the moment. We'll come back and visit height in just a second. We just want to test out our positioning horizontally. And for the width and the height, don't put numbers like 200, 50 in here because you know that that's the width and the height of the button. Use your fields. So I'm going to tell it that we're going to use our button width, and then I'm going to tell it our button height, and then that wraps up our new rect. Now I can say comma, and what do we want the text on the button to say? What do you think? Start game.
Sure.
So we'll throw start game in there. We'll close off the whole button GUI call, and there we go. Let's save. So it looks just like Label, except we've now got a little fancy in here. Let's see what that gives us. So we come back over here and we hit play, and wow, my 200 down was a really good guess.
Yeah, it was a really good guess.
It's but it's still not centered. We have more space on the top than we do on the bottom. But look at the button itself. As far as horizontal positioning goes, we're centered up. Excellent. Let's go ahead and stop. And let's take care of centering the height as well. So we'll jump back over here to where we're just saying, look, position it down at 200. Let me jump over to the next line just to keep things looking neat. I'm going to say screen.height. I'm going to divide this by 2. And now this would have the button, the top of the button, starting at the center of the screen, and then it would be drawn downwards from there. So I need to subtract away from that the button's height divided by 2. So we move it up just by half of that.
And I know order of operations takes care of that. It's just when I'm writing stuff like this, I've always got to break it out into parentheses.
So to those of you that want to see it like such, you can. I'll just do it with just the one to show that, of course, order of operations are going to work just fine for us here. There you go. But, of course, multiplication and division.
Sure, always come first.
Then we'll have our addition and subtraction. So screen, the width is being taken care of, comma. Then the height is being taken care of, comma. Then we're telling the button how wide it is, how tall it is. That ends the new rect. And then we give it its content, which is a string in this case, saying start game. So let's go ahead and hit Control-S to save this, jump back over and hit play. And look at that.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. So now we're centered up. Looks beautiful. Now we need functionality. I need to be able to hit the start game. And by hitting this, I need for level 1 to be loaded. Okay. So I need functionality. Let's start with something simple. I hit the button and it sends out to my console, hello world. How appropriate. Let's jump back in. This is where we're doing inline GUI development, meaning we don't have an event that we're going to register to, so we're not establishing any kind of callback to another function, though I'm going to show you guys in the next series recreating this how you can set a system up so that you can then, if you created a new button, you could then subscribe to its on-click event and tell it, you know, this is the guy I want you to call if I'm clicked on. But in this case, it's all in line. And this is extremely powerful, and it's excellent and until, for me, you get into very complex UIs, and it becomes just a little trickier to manage. But again, that is just a personal opinion. So in this case, very simple, though. How do I check to see if you've clicked this button. In line, I can just do it like this. I can simply say if,
and then put it in parentheses.
put the whole darn thing in parentheses, and then let me go ahead and block my if in. There you go.
Gotcha.
Now all I need to do is say debug.log and then say hello world.
So buttons just automatically return true if they're clicked? Is that how that works?
You got it. So all set up, save it out, jump back over, hit play, drag this guy over onto the screen, hit start. What do you know? Hello world. Ding, 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 ding. And there you go.
Do they just continue returning true as long as they're pressed down?
Hold it down. Nothing, 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 nothing. Let it go where I have actually completed a click.
Okay.
Very important. And why is that? Well, you can cancel your click operation. I mean, you can do it in Windows with pretty much everything.
Yeah, slide away from it.
Yep, and very important with the iPhone as well. The iPhone, the old touch up inside. Basically, you click on a button and you slide your finger off, then you lift your finger up and you've canceled the operation.
Right.
So here, if I press down, slide off, and let go of the mouse, I do not get another hello world. I have to have clicked down and released on him to actually get that event.
Well, on a device like the iPhone, that would also alleviate the problem of telling the difference between somebody tapping the screen and somebody trying to slide on the screen.
Okay. Of course, but we wouldn't be using on GUI, so we'd be setting up a different system.
I know. But I would like maybe you've got a similar type setup in your game where you may be dragging something around or just clicking on it. So that alleviates that problem.
So next thing we're going to do is we're going to simply replace that code with the code necessary to kick off our game, which is level 1. And if you recall, that was the second screen that we drug into the build settings into our list box there, showing all of the screens that will be built into the game. All we need to do is load that particular number. So this is just very simple. So we'll take our debug out and we'll say application dot load level, and then we pass in the index level 1, which is referencing the level 1 scene. Okay,
our game actually.
Our game. So let's hit Control S to save this out. Come back over here, hit play, and let's see how it looks. All right, all's good. Button, everything's responding well. So let's go ahead and hit start. Up, we're playing a game.
Nice.
Well, no, there we go. We're dead. Oh, but I got the other guy anyway. Score's going up, and now I missed one. Great. Okay, but simple. That's all there is to it. Now we just need to set up a lose and a win screen, and we've completed the game, and then we can just come in. For those of you that can tolerate us just a little longer, with a few quick bonus things, such as replacing some of the models, maybe doing that thing Zach was talking about where we slide the guy in. There's a few things we can do.
Sure.
But that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks a lot, guys.